From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
What can't be seen on the surface?
It's really difficult to predict how ecosystems are going to change when invasive species arise and change them.
See what has researchers heading into the woods in Louisiana. The bright spot in the ag economy right now.
They're enjoying these high markets right now.
But how long can those higher prices in the cattle industry last? As new numbers show a diminished outlook for exports.
A lot of this is tied to falling commodity prices.
Who could be our number one ag trading partner next year? The answer right now on AgDay.
AgDay is brought to you by Pioneer. Great performance in the field makes Pioneer brand corn #1 in America. For a winning season, it's Pioneer brand corn. Your best year starts here.
Good morning, I'm Michelle Brooke. Clinton is on assignment. New forecasts show that ag exports next year could see another decline. USDA releasing its forecast indicating a widening trade deficit. The agency projecting 2025 exports at $169.5 billion. That's down $4 billion from this current year and down $26.5 billion from 2 years ago. Meanwhile, imports keep rising. USDA says 2025 could end up with an ag trade deficit of over $42 billion.
A lot of this is tied to falling commodity prices. And then if we look at some other things around the world, maybe a slower Chinese economy, continued strength of the U.S. dollar, China diversifying its sources for trade, perhaps a little bit weaker on export competitiveness for ourselves. Those are all things which are posing some challenges for our exports.
Exports to China are projected to be $24 billion, but Canada is expected to continue to be the top spot for the U.S. with forecasts of more than $29 billion, followed by Mexico at almost $29 billion. And those lower crop prices continue to weigh right now on producers. USDA will provide an updated 2024 financial forecast next month. And the August Ag Economist Monthly Monitor shows the majority of ag economists expect a further deterioration in crop prices to weigh on the overall net farm income picture, forcing the agency to revise their forecasts lower. In fact, nearly 57% expect USDA to revise its forecast. 36% think the revision will be 5 to 10% lower. 7% think USDA will leave its forecast unchanged from February. One ag economist points out the next farm income situation would look even worse if it weren't for more positive prices in livestock.
Let's not forget February was the last time they did their farm income forecast. And a lot of things have changed from early this year to where we sit today. So I do expect some revisions. Again, I think we know crop receipts are going to be lower than what they would have said back at the start of the year. Cattle probably higher, hogs probably higher, dairy probably higher. But I also expect production expenses at least not to go up from where they were originally in the first part of the year. So I'm curious how all those different pieces balance out at the end of the day.
Brown and other ag economists right now have a more bullish outlook when it comes to cattle. As Farm Journal's Ty Morgan reports, experts tell her the fundamentals of the cattle market remain strong.
Cattle prices have been the bright spot, and there continues to be optimism in the cattle market as economists say rebuilding the U.S. cow herd could take years.
We're still getting smaller, actually, as an industry. We started this year with the lowest cattle numbers in decades.
Oklahoma State livestock marketing specialist Daryl Peel says the industry is looking for two major signs to see if rebuilding is underway.
One will be heifer retention. That's the big one that we're looking for.
Don Close of Terrain Ag has also been watching the cattle markets closely for decades. He says those strong signals of heifer retention are not showing up yet.
But when we look at the percentage of heifers in the slaughter mix, when we look at the percentage of heifers of cattle on feed that we had an update with the July cattle on feed report, even when we look at the percentage of heifers in the auction receipts, we still don't have any compelling evidence that there's any measurable heifer retention going on.
Peel says they've been getting anecdotal comments from various ranchers who have started holding back heifers, but the numbers show it's not happening on a large scale yet. Even without USDA's mid-year cattle inventory report this year, signs that show cattle producers have not started to rebuild the cattle herd. And one reason they may be hesitant is because of this.
We got big geographic blocks of the country. It's certainly better, but to give those ranches an opportunity to recharge and really stabilize that grass just now or has not happened yet.
Peel says much of the outlook hinges on drought. He says the current level of heifer slaughter and heifers in feedlots in 2024 suggests that replacement heifer inventory is likely to show modest growth at best in 2025.
I think by and large we've had better forage conditions this year, and some folks can do it and probably are doing it to a limited degree. But there are concerns going forward about re-emerging drought, and particularly with the idea of La Nina rebuilding in the U.S. That's a concern for later this year and on into next year.
The other hurdle may be how expensive it will be to rebuild.
The cost of financing herd rebuilding and just producer expectations for these markets. They're enjoying these high markets right now, but the question is, how long will they last? Will they last long enough to make it worth that investment in those heifers for future production? Apparently producers don't believe we're there yet, so they have not started that process.
Until there are hints the U.S. cattle herd is starting to expand, market watchers say the fuel is there to support strong cattle prices.
Is there room in this market for prices to continue to go higher? Absolutely, I believe that there is. I would not have producers expecting to see the market continue to rally at the pace we have for the last 2 years.
Reporting for AgDay, I'm Tyne Morgan.
A cold front has brought some relief from the heat in the Midwest, but how long could it last? Meteorologist Matt Engelbrecht has an update.
Yeah, we had a cool front come through, but more importantly, it was just the rain, the thunderstorms that moved through the Midwest that really cooled things down. A more substantial cold front is on the way for our Friday, and then more of a dry front coming up on Sunday. So a cooler pattern setting up as we start September the 2nd through the 6th. You see the pocket of cool air encompassing a good portion of the United States. It's one of those rare occasions that I can show this map, and we actually have below normal temperatures for not only the East Coast, but the Midwest and back down here into Texas as well. That being said, we're starting to see that trough and ridge relationship pattern show up across the United States. So you get the below average temperatures back out here towards the east and the Midwest, and then above average high temperatures and back up here into the West Coast, but also into the Northwest as well, the Pacific Northwest. Now keep that map in mind, because the picture I'm about to show you does not reflect what is on your screen. I told you it doesn't reflect what was on your screen. How about a little snow on a hot summer's day? And check out where this was taken. California. Now, Craig taking this picture as he hikes Yosemite in the backcountry of California with a little elevation. That's more than a dusting going on there. Craig was at about 10,000 feet. August snow hasn't been seen in some areas of the West Mountain Ranges since 2003. I'll have more in your forecast coming up.
Corn and soybeans couldn't maintain the positive momentum midweek, but wheat managed to stay in the green. I'll have more coming up on Markets Now. And later, researchers go looking for secrets in these trays in Louisiana and the country.
Earn revenue through the Bear Carbon Program. Simple, flexible, certain. Learn more at bearforeground.com/carbon.
A bit of relief for farmers at the pump. Diesel prices are at their lowest levels since January of 2022. The Energy Information Administration reporting prices dropped to an average of $3.65 a gallon. Now that's more than 82 cents lower than last year. They say it's being driven by reduced demand, stable crude prices, and seasonal changes. Grains mixed on Wednesday with row crops lower, wheat to the plus side. Tommy Grassafi, Advanced Trading, is back with analysis. All right, Tommy, we had 3 days up in the soybean market and then kind of failed. Was that mostly because we did get some rain in some areas of the Corn Belt?
Yeah, and you look back on that pro farmer number, that was a big number. So the fact we were able to open lower on Sunday, rally back up, and we had an incredible rally off those lows. But then the reality of it is that, there's rains coming. It's the end of August. We now can almost say we have a crop. I mean, it's getting to the point in the next few weeks we could be like, there's a crop out there in corn and beans. How much, we're not sure, but we're not running out, right, Michelle? And we're having, with our own clients, having to teach people to lower their expectations. Like, hey, soybeans just rallied 30, 40 cents off the low. That's a big deal. And they think they're going to go a few more dollars, and the markets just haven't been giving us those type of opportunities.
No doubt. And corn was kind of disappointing on Wednesday. We couldn't get any follow through after that key reversal on Tuesday.
Yeah, and I noticed later on Wednesday that I was trading myself, and corn was down 1, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere it was down 4. A very quiet trade. I talked to my friend PJ Quaid, corn options broker, and he said, this is typically and historically a very slow week. People going back to school, high school, grade school, college. That last big travel weekend, maybe we'll get a little good news for grilling season. But folks are just kind of chilling out, and with grain prices so low, Michelle, traders have so many new choices of what they can trade. If corn's not busy, they can go trade Bitcoin. If Bitcoin's not busy, they can go trade crude oil. So we're not all rushing down to the Chicago Board of Trade floors anymore to trade.
Well, we did manage to close higher on Wednesday. So was that some short covering activity here, or prices just getting too cheap?
Wheat is just affordable. I mean, it would totally be okay for wheat to rally $1 from here. I could see that happening, and we're starting to get it. A dime here, a dime here. Let's see if we can finish up. You're right. End of the week, end of the month, not end of the quarter, but the end of the month here coming up. It'd be nice if we can keep it rolling.
All right. Thanks for joining us. That is Tommy Grisapi with Advanced Trading. We'll have more AgDay coming up.
I want to start off looking at the precipitation forecast. So last week we were talking about a ridge of high pressure, which kept some clean real estate back in parts of the Midwest, but also down to the south with that very heavy air mass. Now going through the next 24 hours, what you're going to see show up here Thursday and into Friday is a cold front that's going to come through the Midwest. That's going to be the first of 2 that'll be moving through. In terms of rainfall, I think we get some scattered thunderstorms, may have some higher totals showing up through Minnesota as well as Wisconsin, but also here on the East Coast. We take this out the next 7 days, and that image that we looked at earlier reflects that trough and ridge pattern that we're going to see in the jet stream, and where we get what's called troughiness, scientific term, not really, but it's fun to say. Where we get that troughiness, obviously there's going to be more rain chances around, including a lot of rain, and that's why we have the cooler than average temperatures back into Midland, Odessa, up near Lubbock, Texas, and then over here towards the east. But see the pockets of some heavier downpours as well. You come back over here towards the west and you get a sense of why we're not expecting much in the way of rainfall and above average temperatures. That's the ridge setting up. Take this pattern and flip it. That is where we were the last week or so, with the ridge here and the trough there. Remember that picture that we looked at with the snow? You're not going to get that over the next 7 days in California. So from the jet stream perspective, again, we get to keep an eye on some of these larger storm complexes moving through. I don't expect coverage to be all that great, but it is worth noting some cooler air trying to work through the jet stream, and with that ridge still hanging on, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, it's going to be a bit of a weak clipper system early on. This is jet stream on Friday, and then as we go into your Saturday and Sunday, this will start to trough or dig down here to the south, and that is again kind of that start to that pattern that we were just talking about, where you get the trough trying to dig down here on the east coast, and then that ridge developing to the west coast. And the more pronounced this ridge becomes, the farther north these lines go, the deeper this trough will sink and the cooler these temperatures will be. Not necessarily on Wednesday, but as we get deeper into September. Anna, Ohio, partly cloudy, high around 90 degrees, low of about 68 degrees. Forest Brook, South Carolina, I had vacation there, high around 88 degrees, low of 74, and sunny. Gill, Colorado.
Cover crops can play an important role on the farm when it comes to enhancing soil health and helping a farmer's bottom line. But recently, researchers at Kansas State University looked into the role cover crops can play when it comes to grazing. Researchers collecting information for over 3 years on farms they tested, which would be at least 2 cycles of grazing. They followed up with a final soil sampling to look at the impact of these types of grazing systems on soil health.
On average, we were reaching about 3,000 pounds of cover crop biomass per acre and gave our farmers about 35 to 40 days of grazing on average across the 6 grazing events across the 3 farms. When we looked at those soil health properties, what we found across the board was no measurable impact on soil penetration resistance or bulk density, which is really the biggest concern that folks have with integrating livestock on these systems, that hoof traffic could result in some soil compaction issues that might require more heavy tillage for remediation. And we didn't really see that in this study.
What they did report was seeing an increase in solar organic carbon stocks and potassium concentrations where there were grazing of the cover crops versus where there were not grazing cover crops. A second man is now charged in connection with an alleged cattle theft scheme. A federal grand jury in Charlotte, North Carolina, returning a criminal indictment against 40-year-old Clint Sicking of Munster, Texas. The U.S. Attorney's Office saying it's in connection with a $780,000 scheme involving the theft of livestock. Now, according to court documents from April 2018 to October 2022, Sicking conspired with 25-year-old William Edwards of Mount Airy, North Carolina, to defraud sale barns in 2 counties in North Carolina. An indictment alleges on several occasions the 2 bought cattle from sale barns, wrote checks to pay for the cattle, knowing the checks were worthless, and then didn't have the funds to cover the checks. They were able to transport the cattle out of state before the sale barns and banks could determine the checks were worthless. They then resold the cattle in Texas and Oklahoma. Sicking is charged with bank fraud, theft of livestock, and 4 counts associated with transporting the stolen livestock and selling them. Earlier this month, William Edwards pleaded guilty to alleged involvement in the schemes. Still ahead, researchers in Louisiana are spending a lot of time in the woods, and what they're finding could hopefully help save trees in the country. We recently told you North Dakota is the latest state to confirm emerald ash borer. As LSU's Craig Gotro tells us, researchers in Louisiana are working to determine what insects are present in trees in their state and what changes may occur when invasive species like the emerald ash borer show up.
Every week, entomologists with the LSU Ag Center trudge through bottomland swamps to find out what insects are utilizing the forest. The information they are gathering will be used to see how insect populations change if or when the canopy is modified by the invasive emerald ash borer.
It's really difficult to predict how ecosystems are going to change when invasive species arise and change them. But having this baseline accounting is going to allow us to do that.
Ash trees are most at risk, and the scientists are studying 3 species of ash: pumpkin, Carolina, and green. Little is known about 2 of the species.
The pumpkin ash and the Carolina ash are relatively understudied compared to the green ash, and we're using that as the green ash as a standard to compare the new data for the pumpkin ash and the Carolina ash.
Capturing insects using the ash trees has not been a problem. More than 3,300 individual beetles have been trapped so far. There has even been a surprise or 2.
We found one insect that was listed as at risk are these plant bugs that are in a specific genus called Tropidosteptes. And we actually found a few of these in our traps, which is really exciting.
The borer is responsible for killing millions of ash trees across North America, and a concern is the removal of ash trees from the environment will allow invasive trees to thrive and change the ecosystem.
As invasive plants like Chinese tallow move in and dominate where ash used to occur, that's homogenizing these forests and reducing biodiversity.
To control the spread of the emerald ash borer, biocontrol methods using parasitoid wasps are being implemented. With the LSU Ag Center, this is Craig Gotra reporting.
Thanks, Craig. That's all the time we have for this morning. Thanks for watching. For all of us here at AgDay, I'm Michelle Rook. Have yourself a great day.